It was announced last week that Rogue One is getting its very own comic book. It's not going to be a sequel series because that's just A New Hope, and it's not going to be a prequel series, although that would probably be a lot more interesting. No, Rogue One is getting its very own comic adaptation written by Jody Houser and illustrated by Emilio Laizo. It'll retell the events of the movie and also expand on certain elements, but it raises the question, do we need it? In this day and age, are comic book adaptations of movies necessary? Before we go on, because I know people call me out on this in the chat, I know it's pronounced adaptation, and I'm trying to pronounce it adaptation. If I say adaptation, sue me. Since the very beginning, Star Wars has been a part of comics in a way that not many other licensed properties have. It never felt like a cheap cash-in, it just felt like a natural part of what Marvel was putting out at the time. And it's always been a landmark series. The original comic helped save Marvel from bankruptcy, and the 2015 relaunch was the best-selling comic of the year. Even during the Dark Horse era, these comics were very well loved and often credited with keeping Star Wars in the public eye more so than the books and the video games combined. The very first Star Wars comic was an adaptation of the very first movie. Now, this made sense back in the day. There wasn't a home video market, so movie studios would commission novelizations or comic book adaptations so that the fans who liked the movie can experience it at home. You still see novelizations here and there, mostly for bigger budget movies, but they're not as prevalent as they once were. Hell, DC and Marvel don't even do adaptations of their own movies anymore. A tie-in prequel maybe, but not a straight-up translation from screen to page. With Star Wars, it's almost become a tradition at this point that every movie gets its own adaptation. Like I said, that's how it started, and even during the Dark Horse era, they made comic book adaptations of the prequels. I somehow own the Episode 1 adaptation. But do we even really need adaptations anymore? Like I said, this was because there was no home video market at the time, but now there is. If I wanted to watch the movie, I pop in the Blu-ray or watch it online. Now, writer Jody Houser has said that they're going to be doing things a little differently, adding things to the comic that weren't in the movie. This could be interesting. Sometimes an adaptation can be something completely different from its big screen counterpart. This is often because the writer of the adaptation is working from an earlier script that's very different from the shooting script. A famous recent example of this is Django Unchained. The comic book adaptation was based on Quentin Tarantino's very first draft, so this is very different from what we saw in movie theaters. And Rogue One was famously chopped up and re-edited before release, so I'm sure there's a lot that we haven't seen that can go right into this comic book. But two things have me concerned. One, Marvel's recent adaptation of The Force Awakens didn't expand on anything. It was more or less a straight shot-for-shot translation from screen to page. Now, that's not to say that Jody Houser can't add to Rogue One. She's a good writer, and like I said, Rogue One was famously cut up a whole lot, so there's definitely room to add more. But maybe Marvel and Disney don't want her to expand on anything. Maybe they just want it to be a straight translation. That might be why The Force Awakens comic was pretty much just what you saw on the screen. Also, like The Force Awakens comic, this is going to be a 6-issue miniseries. The first issue is scheduled to come out in April, and if everything stays on track with no delays, we'll get the last issue in September. By then, we'll already be in full hype mode for Episode 8, and I'm sure Marvel will have a lot of Episode 8 things in its pipeline by then. Who's going to be up for Rogue One stuff by then? I feel like if they wanted to do this, they should just do one complete graphic novel and release it in April, all at once. None of this miniseries crap. This way, we get everything all at once where we're all still high on Rogue One, and it doesn't interfere with any excitement for Episode 8. Also, I will stress that it is important that the comic book adaptation is different from the movie. Not too different, but just different enough. Give us things we didn't see in the movie in the book, like maybe more of Jyn Erso and Saw Gerrera, or maybe more with Cassian and K2SO, or K2SO and anybody really. I guess there still could be a place for comic book adaptations of movies, and Star Wars can definitely be at the forefront of that. But they really need to think about changing their approach. The old way doesn't work like it did in the past. But if other licensed comics can evolve with the time, so can the adaptation, I think. What do you guys think about this Rogue One adaptation? Are you excited for it, or do you think they should be doing something else with these characters and this franchise? Let me know down below or anywhere on the internet. I know last week I said I'd be talking about another licensed comic for my unofficial licensed comic month, but this wasn't it. The comic I was going to talk about got delayed until next week, so I'm going to talk about it then. But it's a good thing that this news broke, otherwise I'd have nothing to talk about. New videos every Tuesday and Wednesday, and of course Wednesday night is Wulff Den Live. How could you forget? Every Wednesday right here on YouTube, 9 p.m. Eastern. If you did forget, no problem. It goes up again the next day, also in audio format on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. We are everywhere. And as always, guys, like if you like, subscribe if you really like, share this video with a friend. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.